Hello, everybody. We're back, and today we'll be talking about A Long Way Gone, written by Ishmael Bay. I'm Luke McGilvery, and I'm here with
Cade McDougal, David Kovich, and
Harry Waugh. And for our first topic of discussion, I'm going to be reading the written part on the back of the book to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about and what the book's about. At the age of 12, Ishmael Bay fled attacking rebels in Sierra Leone and wandered a land rendered unrecognizable by violence. By 13, he'd been picked up by the government army, and Bay, at heart a gentle boy, found that he was capable of truly terrible acts. At 16, he was removed from fighting by UNICEF, and through the help of the staff at his rehabilitation center, he learned how to forgive himself, to regain his humanity, and finally to heal. This is an extraordinary and mesmerizing account, told with real literary force and heartbreaking honesty. From reading the back of the book, it gives you an idea that you think maybe the main character lost himself and kind of went crazy in the war, don't you think?
Yeah. Also, Ishmael's story shows both horror and the possibility of redemption. This is an unbearable book that has to be born. Read it, says the Globe and Mail. Now I will be talking about the literary devices in the story. Harry will be talking about the purpose and themes and structure. Cade will be talking about the connection and meaning, and Arthur will be talking about the character development.
if you've never read this book before, there is a bit of a trigger warning. It discusses war, violence, loss, and trauma, but it also carries profound messages of resilience and hope. This one hit hard, but it was also very good. Let's get into it.
For the literary devices, the first one is flashbacks. The impact that flashbacks had on the book was it lets the reader relive some of the major events that shaped him as a person throughout the story. The evidence we have of this is on page 217 when he remembered the stories around the campfire back in his village. The next one is foreshadowing. The impact it had on the story was it gives evidence that something will happen in the future. Typically, foreshadowing is at the start of the book. On page 19, it said that his life currently is way different in New York. So that foreshadows that he's currently living in New York. Then the last one is irony. The impact irony had was it keeps the book interesting and makes the reader guess on what's going to happen. The evidence we have of this was that he was expected to continue in the war, then he got chosen to go to rehab, and that changed his life.
Now I'm going to be talking about the purpose, themes, and structure. The purpose of this book is that the author who went through the story, he wants people to understand what really happens during war. And the themes in this book are war and grief. There's also themes of survival, loss, and trauma, as he loses family members and he fights in the war. And the text is structured. It starts off when he is young at the age of 12, and it continues on for many years when he grows older. And the perspective that it's told from is first person. And I think that the author chose first person so that it feels more like when you're reading the book, it feels more like you're in the story.
I'm Cade, and I'm going to be talking about the connections and meanings of the book. For connections, I made two. One being text to world. I can connect to the world with this book because there's current wars going on right now. Just like in the book, there's kids and families dying and losing their families just like Ishmael was. I feel bad for him, and I can really connect to that part of the book. And then for text to self, Ishmael lost many family members in the book. I've also lost family members and had to go through losing them just like he did. I can connect with him on that part and feel bad for him. With the meaning, there's a very good meaning behind this book. It is a powerful book detailing his transformation from an innocent child into a traumatized child soldier. Then he goes back to rehab and recovered from it all, going back to an innocent child but still having the trauma behind it.
Hi, my name is Arthur. I'll be introducing the character development. The major characters grow older in the story as some of them die, and the ones that stay alive become more used to death and war and start losing emotions. And the ones that stay alive become more used to death and war and start losing emotions as the war goes on. Their motivation in keeping going is finding survival and hope, as well as looking for their families.
What about the conflict and resolutions?
For that, there was quite a few conflicts. One being how he was in constant fear of the rebels and had to always be running away for the start of the book. He was always in fear and was always in trouble and didn't get to have his childhood like normal kids do. What about you, Luke?
Another one would be when he joined the government army and became addicted to drugs. What about you, Arthur?
Later on in the book, when he joins the military, he had an internal conflict with himself after he kills his first person and starts hallucinating and stuff like that. What about you, Harry?
The conflict I thought of is him losing his family. Throughout the book, he didn't really have any of his family members. He lost them at the start of the book, and that definitely was hard for him because he kept thinking about them and thinking about his past memories and all of his past trauma, which made him worse and made him more tired. Now we're going to be talking about the resolutions to the conflicts that we just discussed.
He grew out of being constantly afraid of the rebels once he finally joined the army. When he was in the army, he lost all fear to the rebels and wasn't afraid of much anymore.
For mine, he got taken out of the war and went to rehab, and that helped him get rid of his drug addictions and helped him forget about his past trauma.
When he joined rehab, it also helped him mentally by calming him and making him forget about all the people he killed during the conflict.
And the resolution to him losing his family was he found lots of friends along his journey of running away, and he hung out with his friends, and they didn't talk much, but when they did talk, he used that as a way to forget about his family and forget about his past.
Now for our first open-ended question, we have, what if he never joined the army?
What do you guys think about this question? Any thoughts?
I think if he never joined the army, he probably would have gotten killed early on in the book. He probably would have died of starvation or still been running from the rebels, constantly afraid of everything in his path.
I agree with what Cade said. I think he would have got killed from the rebels, or he would have died of starvation from running from the rebels. What about you, Arthur?
I think that him and his friends would eventually make their way out of the country by just walking through the forest like they did before, and maybe some more of them would die along the way.
That's a good take on it. I agree with what Arthur said. Maybe they could have found a way out of the country and escaped the war.
Now for our second open-ended question, we have, how would it be different if he had his family along his journey with him?
I think that if he had his family throughout the whole book, he would have escaped for sure, because he mentally would be stronger and his family could help him with food problems and survival and directions and everything. And I think it would have turned out completely opposite.
I agree. I think he would have had way more support mentally with his family, which would have avoided him being addicted to drugs, because he would have had a bigger support with having his whole family with him.
I agree with what Harry and Cade said, but I think with his family they wouldn't be as fast moving because they have some older people with them, and maybe some villages wouldn't give them much mercy because it's not just kids walking around, it's a whole family.
Yeah, I
Wow,
agree with
that's
all those.
That's a good take, Arthur.
Now, our third one is, what if their home village ever got raided by the rebels?
Who wants to start this question off? I think Luke starts us off.
I got it. So, if their village never got raided in the first place, there would be no reason for them to run away, and then they would never have to go through the whole story.
I think that if their village, even if it didn't get raided at the start, it would have gotten raided eventually throughout the book. So I think it would have turned out the same.
I agree with both of you, but I also think if it didn't get raided at the start, but it did get raided later on, it would have gave them more time to prepare and to run away, other than getting taken, losing his family right away. He would have had time to escape with his family, or at least be more prepared for the war and to be taken.
I agree that the village would eventually get raided, but I don't think they'd have enough time to prepare. And since when it got raided in the book, he was not in the village, if they got raided later, he would have probably been in the village, and he would have died at the start.
That's a
Arthur
good
always
point, bro.
has the best point for all these questions.
That's very good. Now for our last question. How did the trip to New York change him? I think the trip to New York changed him because he got to experience new things in a better community around him, where he wasn't trying to run for his life all the time.
I agree. I think it must have been hard for him to move somewhere else because of his whole culture. But I think that it would be nice to have a fresh start and kind of forget about his past.
I agree. I think it was probably a big change for him being able to be safe where he lives, but I think it made him more humane at the end of the book.
Yeah, I agree. It was probably nice for him to see some place that is not in war and doesn't have much poverty.
He also got to meet new people who had went through the same experiences but in different countries.
Now we're going to be discussing our final thoughts all together. One thought that I thought about before you even dive into the book is the cover. The cover gives you a good idea of what the book's going to be about. It has a picture of him. He has part of a RPG. He has a knife, a gun, and you can tell he's been walking for a while and going through a lot of pain with his sandals that are broken.
And he's also very short. You can tell he's a very young kid in the picture. Arthur, what did you think about the book?
I like how it showed me how people go through war, and it also showed me the culture of Sierra Leone, and it was pretty fun.
I think that I've never read a book that told the story of war from this perspective, and I think it was eye-opening and that I learned a lot from it, and I really enjoyed reading it. I think that the kid went through a lot of struggles, and it wasn't easy, but it's a real survival story, and in the end, everything did get better.
Me, I think it was I'd never read a story like this before, and I think it was a good way of understanding how life is in the countries in Africa that go through civil wars all the time, and where kids have to look out for themselves.
And I think we can all agree that the author did a good job with the purpose and structure and the literary devices.
Back onto the book cover, at the front you can tell that he's going through a lot, but then if you flip to the back, it shows him smiling and he looks happy and recovered, which symbolizes he did get better throughout the story. I think it's also really neat to know that he wrote this book about himself. I think it's cool that he chose to tell his story this way, and I think it's good that he told his story this way so we can see perspective of what's actually happening in the world to some people.
I recommend this book to anyone who is interested in war, or anyone who likes a story where the main character struggles.